I'd like to invite Emma Patterson Dennis to be recognized, who is our guest reader this morning. Welcome, Emma.
On Turning by Jack Reimer. Now is the time for turning. The leaves are beginning to turn from green to red and orange. The birds are beginning to turn and are heading once more towards the south. The animals are beginning to turn to storing their food for the winter. For leaves, birds, and animals, turning comes instinctively. But for us, turning does not come so easily. It takes an act of will for us to make a turn. It means breaking with old habits. It means admitting that we have been wrong, and this is never easy. It means losing face. It means starting all over again, and this is always painful. It means saying, I am sorry. It means recognizing that we have the ability to change. These things are hard to do. But unless we turn, we will be trapped forever in yesterday's ways. God, help us to turn from callousness to sensitivity, from hostility to love, from pettiness to purpose, from envy to contentment, from carelessness to discipline, from fear to faith. Turn us around, O God, and bring us back toward you. Revive our lives as at the beginning, and turn us toward each other, God, for in isolation there is no life.
Thank you, Emma, for that wonderful reading. Let us now listen to the words of Molly Webster and Tracy Chapman.
Talking about a revolution that sounds like a whisper. Don't you know they're talking about a revolution that sounds like a whisper? Well, they're sitting in the welfare lines, crying at the doorsteps of those armies of salvation, wasting time in the unemployment lines, sitting there around waiting for a promotion. Don't you know they're talking about a revolution and it sounds like a whisper? Don't you know they're talking about a revolution and it sounds like a whisper? Poor people gonna rise up and get their share. Poor people gonna rise up and take what's theirs. Don't you know they're talking about a revolution and it sounds like a whisper? Finally the tables are starting to turn, talking about a revolution, no. Finally the tables are starting to turn, talking about a revolution, no. Talking about a revolution, no. Talking about a revolution, no. Don't you know?
Thank you, Molly, for that strong song by Tracy Chapman. Finally, the tables are starting to turn. The events of the past week have been challenging. We have experienced moments of deep fear, followed by slow, precarious moments of hope. We have witnessed a contested election that is pulling our nation apart in many ways and has challenged many of the principles of our democracy right down to its core. On top of all that tumult and political strife of the elections, We are also witnessing a spike in cases and deaths due to the COVID pandemic. All of these things have made this week kind of a bit of an emotional roller coaster. I've noticed a certain level of weariness creeping in to my heart and soul. Yet today, on the second Sunday or Sabbath of the month, November 2020, I find that despite of all the weariness and concern that I feel in our country, I am also finding a growing sense of hope and a deep sense of gratitude and awe for the power of democracy itself. I feel a deep sense of gratitude to all the people who over the course of history, both recent and far, have engaged in a struggle to create a form of government that has the strength to hold conflict while at the same time holding healthy boundaries that prevent those who wish to become tyrants or dictators from taking over. I feel like I am caught between a paradigm of wanting to mourn and wanting to call for a revolution. I feel a sense of disappointment, but also a sense of compassion. In the past 4 years, there have been many times when our democratic ideals have been attacked. Slowly, the ideals of our American democracy, as complex and as flawed as they are, have slowly been whittled away. Luckily, we have been strong enough to withhold the storm of false information, intentional untruths, and lies by particular actors who have sought to undo the very fabric of our democratic process. Lies and falsehoods that have displaced real concerns of people who are suffering in our country and need our attention. This morning, I am filled with cautious optimism about our country and the way that it is turning it back again towards the principle that lay at the core of our democratic system, that all people matter, a belief in freedom of religion and thought that should also be responsible, and life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness for all people, which in my mind means serving the greatest good. As we face a nation divided, we are faced with the inconvenient truth of Kissa Gotami from our story earlier. For not a household or family or person in our country has not experienced some form of loss or suffering, especially over the course of the last 4 years. Some people who have greater means of wealth have been able to weather the storm a little bit better than others, but we are all struggling to make meaning of the times that we live in and the struggles that we all struggle with. The strength of our democratic system is that we are able to hold these multiple challenges and conflict in a way that allows us to look for answers collectively. In his book, Healing the Heart of American Democracy, Parker Palmer says, "The endless argument of political life and democracy is a nonstop flow of contradictions and conflicts. What shall we do when the majority infringes upon the right of the minority? If we want both freedom and justice, what is the proper balance of unrestrained personal or economic activity and government regulation? Which is the most effective in transforming different kinds of behaviors? Education, incentives, or legal sanctions? In the face of a foreign threat, is our national interest more likely to be secured through quiet diplomacy or saber battling? In the face of divergent problems like these, what kind of institutions will allow people to disagree and open up and work together rather than shut down and turn against each other? When America's founders wrestled with that question, they were motivated in part by a desire to go beyond the old world traditions of resolving conflicts by royal decree. But their more immediate motivation was the need to deal with the serious conflicts that they had among themselves. This is a challenge that lies at the heart of our democracy, a form of government that allows for many voices and holds conflict in a way that allows people to experience the suffering. And while we realize that conflict is nothing new to our country's experiment in the democratic process, the work for us is to figure out how to hold that suffering in a way that is positive, that is productive, as opposed to divisive and destructive. Perhaps this is the greatest challenge that we face as a nation as we move into the years ahead. How can we live with these conflicts within our nation and seek common wholeness, a common center? In his breakthrough book, Man's Search for Meaning, psychologist Viktor Frankl, a concentration camp survivor, talks about his experience in his life at the concentration camp. He saw much suffering and many people who could not endure the brutal conditions at the camp. Among the many powerful observations that he made from his experience of deep suffering was that people who were able to endure the harshest treatment from the Nazi captors had this bit of wisdom that they held. He said, suffering ceases to be suffering the moment it finds meaning, such as the meaning of sacrifice. As people of faith, we believe in the democratic process and freedom of thought and the inherent worth and dignity of all human beings. I find Frankl's words helpful in making sense of a divided country in which we now live. If we are willing to continue living and returning to our core values of our national ethos, if we are willing to return to the core values of our Unitarian Universalist faith, we will find meaning and we will be able to provide loving support to each other and be able to continue in the struggle to hold up a common meaning of our nation's Constitution. We who have privilege might experience suffering, frustration, or anger towards those to whom we disagree. And if we're able to keep our eyes focused on the prize, working to make the world a better place for all people, then our sense of meaning will help us endure the challenges that we face along the way. They'll help us remember the big picture of striving to create a more perfect union that can help us lean into a society immersed in conflict without making it personal. It will help us remember the importance of listening deeply to others when it comes to their suffering, because the only way that we are going to move forward as a nation is to hear the suffering of others and make an intentional action of responding to that with love and kindness and taking it seriously. If we respond in a way that is dismissive or incites more frustration or anger or name calling, then we are doomed. It is my belief that the meaning of our elections past week is a statement that as a country, we have rejected the rule of tyrants. Instead, we have chosen a path of greater humility and kindness. What remains unresolved are the many issues that continue to challenge our country. To heal and to grow, we must celebrate this hope and the powerful meaning of electing our first woman vice president our first woman vice president of color, our first woman vice president whose parents were immigrants who came to this country. These are the ideals of our American ethos, that leadership is open to all people, that wisdom comes from everyone who is engaged in our society. So it is important in the days to come that we continue to nurture all corners of our society so that we can continue to grow and heal from the struggles that we are facing right now, even as we're counting votes and trying to decide, or trying to officially name the actual numbers that have voted. This is hard work. In the Jewish tradition, there is many stories about the importance of a broken heart. And there's a specific Hasidic tale where a disciple goes to a rabbi and says to the rabbi, "Why does the Torah tell us to place these words, upon our hearts? Why does it not tell us to place these holy words, these sacred words, in our hearts?" The rabbi answers, "It is because the way that we are. Our hearts tend to be closed, and we cannot place holy words in our hearts because they are so closed up and we are so aware of our own needs. So the best that we can do is to place those words on top of our hearts, and there they will stay until one day our hearts break open. And then the words will fall in." Dear friends, in this time of division, let us place the words of love and kindness on our hearts. Let our hearts break open so we can begin the important work of healing our nation, of bringing people back together again, so we can engage in the difficult work, the struggle, the conflict that is innately part of our democratic experience. I end with these words. Nothing that is worth doing can be achieved completely in our lifetime, and therefore we are saved by hope. Nothing which is true or beautiful or makes sense in any immediate context of history. Therefore, we must be saved by faith. And nothing that we do, however virtuous, can ever be accomplished alone. Therefore, we are saved by love and working together in harmony. Blessed be